The twin suns hung low over the alien slave market. The air was hot, filled with smoke, shouting, and the sharp smell of oil. Creatures from different planets walked between stalls, looking for cheap labor. Some laughed, some bargained, some just watched. She did neither. The girl walked slowly. Her wrists were chained in front of her. Her ankles, too. The chains made a soft clink sound with every step. Her skin was pale blue. Her hair was silver like moonlight. Her eyes, wide and glowing violet, looked at no one. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She didn't even blink too much. The crowd called her mute. They said she was useless. Quiet, broken. But Captain Rourke stood in the back of the crowd, and he saw something different. He was a human. A soldier once. Now a quiet traveler, flying between dead moons and lost stations. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. But he had seen enough cruelty in the galaxy to know it when he saw it. And this was worse than war. The alien auctioneer shouted, "Next." A rare female from the Solari species. No voice, no bite. No fight. Obedient. The crowd laughed. Some threw coins. One alien made a dirty joke. The girl didn't flinch. They forced her to kneel on a platform. A guard pushed her head down. The metal collar around her neck glowed red, ready to shock her if she moved. Captain Rourke's fists clenched. His jaw tightened. He tried to walk away, but then the girl's eyes met his. Just for a second. Just 1 second, and that was all it took. He didn't see fear in those eyes. He saw emptiness. Like the light inside her had died long ago, and something inside Rourke snapped. He pushed through the crowd. "Hey!" shouted the auctioneer. "Back off, human." Rourke didn't stop. He walked straight onto the platform. "Get down," a guard warned, raising his weapon. Rourke grabbed the guard's wrist and twisted. The alien screamed as his arm broke. The crowd gasped. Another guard rushed in. Rourke ducked, swung his elbow, key, and knocked him out cold. The third raised his blaster. But Rourke was faster. One punch, the guard fell. The auctioneer backed away, terrified. "You're mad." "She's not worth it." Rourke pulled a pouch of coins. From his belt, he threw it on the ground. "Now she is." Then he knelt beside the chained girl. She didn't move. She didn't look at him, but her chains were shaking. Rourke placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "I'm not going to hurt you," he whispered. No reply. He took out his knife, carefully cut the power cable from her collar, and broke her chains. 4. The first time, the girl looked confused, free. Rourke stood and picked her up. She was light to light. She hadn't eaten well in a long time. The crowd stood in silence. No one dared to stop him. They just watched. Rourke carried her down from the stage, through the market, and into the dusty street. His ship was parked just outside the market walls. Inside the ship, he set her down on a soft bench. The engine hummed. Quietly. The air was cooler here. He handed her a canteen of water. She didn't take it. He placed it beside her and sat across the room. They sat in silence. Minutes passed. She finally picked up the water and took a slow sip. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. She looked at him again. She didn't understand him. Why had he done this? Why risk his life? For her, no one had ever done that. Not her people, not her masters, not the traitors. No one. Captain Rourke leaned back in his chair, staring. At the ceiling, he didn't know what had come over him. He had seen worse things. He'd walked past pain before, but not this time. Something in her eyes had broken. Him. Not out of pity, out of anger, out of shame, out of something deep. Something human. Back in the cargo bay, the girl curled up on the bench. She kept her eyes on the floor, but her hands were no longer shaking. The collar was gone. The chains were gone. For the first time in years. She was free, and she didn't even know what to do with that feeling. She closed her eyes. Not to sleep, but to remember who she was. Before all this, and deep inside her heart, something small, something warm began to return. Captain Rourke stood in the middle of his ship's control room. His hands were still bruised from the fight. His knuckles were red. He hadn't washed the blood off yet. He stared at the stars outside the window, lost in thought. What did I just do? He whispered to himself. He had punched 3 guards, broken the auctioneer's nose, walked into a slave market, challenged a system that had stood for hundreds of years. And for what? For a girl who hadn't said a single word. For a girl with silver hair, violet eyes, and silence as deep as space. But he didn't regret it, not even for a second. Behind him, the girl sat still on the bench. Her name was still a mystery. She hadn't spoken. She hadn't smiled, but she watched him, carefully. Rourke turned around and met her gaze. "I'm Captain Rourke," he said softly. "And this is my ship, the Valkyrie." No response. He tried. "Again, you're safe here. No one will hurt you." The girl blinked once. Slowly, still no answer. Rourke walked to a cabinet and pulled out a ration bar. It wasn't much, just dried protein and sugar. But it was better than nothing. He placed it beside her on the bench. "You need to eat." "Ha," he said. She looked at the food, then back at him. Her hands didn't move. He sighed and sat down across from her. "I used to be a soldier," he said, talking more to the silence than to her. "Fought in the border wars. Lost people, got tired, walked away." He looked at her. "I've seen pain. I've seen monsters. But today," he paused. "Today I saw something I couldn't ignore." The girl's fingers moved, slowly, carefully. She picked up the ration bar and unwrapped it. Her hands were thin. Bones showed through her skin. She looked like she hadn't eaten properly in weeks. She took a small bite, then another. Then she stopped and held the bar in both hands, like it was the most precious thing in the galaxy. Rourke smiled, just a little. "That's good," he said. Still, no words came from her lips. But something had changed. She was eating. She was listening. Suddenly, the ship's alarm beeped. "Warning, incoming signal detected." Rourke stood quickly and walked to the control panel. A message was blinking on the screen. "Bounty notice issued, illegal removal of registered property, 1 human male, 1 female, Solari, dead or alive." Rourke cursed under his breath. They already found us. He looked back at the girl. She was staring at the screen, too. Her eyes were wide. She understood. Rourke walked over and knelt beside her. "They'll come for us," he said. "But I'm not giving you back. Ever." She looked at him, confused. "I'm not your owner," he said. "I don't want to control you. I couldn't watch anymore. Us all?" Still, the girl didn't speak, but her lips moved slightly, almost like she was trying to remember how later that night. Rourke sat at the edge of his bunk. He didn't sleep. He just kept thinking. He had lived his life in silence, traveling from one dead world to another, never getting involved, never picking sides. But that girl, she changed something inside him. She reminded him what it meant to feel, to care, to snap. Meanwhile, in the quiet of the ship, the girl walked slowly through the hallway, barefoot, cautious. She entered the room where Rourke kept old things, memories of a life before the wars. A small box caught her eye. It was cracked, dusty, and strange. She touched it. It opened. Music played, soft, slow, human. A lullaby? She froze. The sound was warm, gentle. Her knees gave out, and she sat on the floor. Her hands covered her face, and for the first time, she cried. Rourke heard the soft notes and followed them. He found her there curled up beside the music box, shaking. He didn't speak. He didn't ask. He just sat beside her and let her cry. Minutes passed. Then she looked at him. Her lips trembled. I remember, she whispered. Rourke's eyes widened. Her voice was soft, weak. But it was real. You spoke. He said. The girl nodded slowly. My name is Lyra. The ship drifted quietly through space, like a ghost among the stars. Inside, everything was still, calm, peaceful. But inside Lyra's heart, there was a storm. She sat on the floor of the memory room, hugging her knees to her chest. The small music box sat beside her. Its song had faded, but its memory still echoed in her mind. For the first time in years, she had spoken. Just one sentence, just her name. And now she didn't know what to feel. Captain Rourke stood in the hallway, just outside the open door. He didn't say anything. He didn't want to scare her, but he heard it. Her voice, small, shaky, real. He slowly stepped into the room and knelt beside her. You remembered your name, he said quietly. She nodded. I'm proud of you, Lyra. Her hands tightened around her legs. I forgot how it feels to be a person, she whispered. I was not alive for a long time. Rourke looked at her face. It was tired, but not empty anymore. There was something behind her eyes now. A light dot, faint dot, but growing. Later, Rourke made some warm soup from the ship's supplies. It wasn't fancy, just water, dried herbs, and protein paste, but it was hot and gentle. He handed her a bowl. She took it with both hands and sipped slowly. Every time she swallowed, her throat trembled, like her body was still surprised by kindness. Rourke sat across from her at the table. He didn't ask questions. He didn't push. But after a few minutes, Lyra spoke again. Do you know what they called me? She asked softly. Rourke shook his head. They didn't, she said. They never gave me a name. I was just thing, or asset, or silent one. Rourke clenched his jaw. They tried to break you, he said. They did, Lyra replied. For a long time, I let them. She looked down into her bowl. But then I saw you, in the crowd. You didn't look away. You didn't laugh, and when you moved, I thought maybe I was dreaming. You weren't dreaming, he said. I saw you. I felt you. She looked up at him. Her eyes shimmered. No one ever felt anything for me. The ship's engines hummed gently. The stars outside drifted past like slow-moving diamonds dot inside. Something strange was happening. Not between planets, not between armies, but between two broken souls, one human. One alien sitting quietly across a table. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. Not because she was scared, but because her mind was full of questions. Why did he save her? Why did he risk his life? Why did he still care? She walked through the ship's halls, her bare feet making no sound. She found the cockpit. Rourke was there. As always, looking out at the stars. He didn't turn around. I heard your steps, he said. You walk like you're still in chains. Lyra blinked. I don't know how else to walk. He finally turned and looked at her. You'll learn. You're free now. She sat beside him in the co-pilot seat. The stars stretched before them like rivers of light. Do humans always do what you did? She asked. No, he said. Most humans don't snap like I did. Most just look away. Then why didn't you? He was quiet for a long time. I don't know, he said finally. Maybe I got tired of being the one who walks away. Lyra looked down. Everyone walked away from me. Not anymore, Rourke said. The next day, Lyra began to explore the ship more. She touched walls, opened doors, peeked into the engine room. Her fingers danced across panels and wires like she was learning a new language. Rourke watched from a distance. She's curious. He thought, that's a good sign. Later in the kitchen, she found a spoon and held it up. What is this? For Rourke chuckled. For eating. She stared at it, confused. Not with your hands. Nope. Try it. She tried. Soup spilled. She made a face. But Rourke laughed, and slowly. So did she, a sound that hadn't left her lips in years. A laugh, that night. Lyra placed something on Rourke's table. It was a small symbol made of wires, old bolts, and string. She had made it herself. I want to give this to you, she said. What is it? He asked. A piece of me, she said, to thank you. He picked it up, touched by the gesture. Lyra, you don't have to thank me. Yes, I do, she said. Because I was gone. I was empty. And now I feel something again. Because of you. Rourke looked at the symbol. It was messy, imperfect, but it was full of meaning, and in that moment, he realized something. He hadn't just saved Lyra, she was saving him too. Captain Rourke stood by the ship's medical station, wrapping a small bandage around his palm. The bruises from the fight days ago had started to fade, but the soreness reminded him of what he'd done. He looked down at the metal charm. Lyra had made a clumsy shape of wires and bolts, but to him it was more valuable than any gold. She had given it with both hands, like an offering, like trust, and now he wanted to give her something in return. Lyra sat on the edge of her small bed, looking at her fingers. She wiggled them like she was testing if they still worked. For so long, she had been ordered to kneel, bow, serve. Now, no one told her what to do. Freedom felt strange, almost unreal. She heard a soft knock. Rourke stood at the doorway with a folded piece of cloth in his hands. I brought you something, he said. She tilted her head. It's a coat, he explained. A small one. I stitched it myself. Thought you might be cold. Lyra stood up and walked over slowly. She took it, then gently ran her hand over the fabric. It wasn't perfect. The stitches were uneven, but it was warm. Soft, she slipped it over her shoulders and looked up at him. It's the first thing anyone has ever given me. Rourke smiled. You deserve more than just this. Later, as the ship floated through deep space, Rourke opened a drawer in his room and pulled out a small device. It was a memory reader, holographic projector used for healing trauma. He carried it to Lyra, who now sat at the round table in the common room. I want to help you remember, he said gently. Only if you're ready. Lyra froze. She looked at the device like it was poison. But then, slowly, she nodded. I need to show you, she whispered. Rourke sat down beside her. Lyra placed her fingertips on the reader's surface. The lights dimmed, and soft blue waves filled the air. A hologram flickered into view. Not a place, but a memory. Rourke gasped. He saw a cage, tiny, dark, cold. Inside, a small version of Lyra curled into a ball. Guards shouted. Electric sticks hit the bars. Food was tossed like scraps. Then the scene changed. She was older, standing before a line of alien buyers. Eyes empty, collar tight around her neck. She was made to bow, made to dance, made to serve. Always silent, always hurting. Then another flash. An alien slapped her when she dropped a tray. Another pushed her down a flight of stairs. One day, she simply stopped reacting. She became a shadow, a ghost, a thing. The vision ended. The lights faded. Lyra sat frozen. Tears poured down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them. She didn't move. Rourke said nothing. He only reached out and took her hand. Her whole body trembled. But she didn't pull away. I thought I was broken forever, she whispered. I thought I would die with no name. No one would ever know. I existed. Rourke squeezed her hand gently. "But now someone does," he said. "I do." Lyra looked at him through teary eyes. "You didn't even know me. I didn't have to," he said. "You were hurting. That was enough." She leaned forwards, lowly, and placed her forehead against his chest. She didn't hug him. She just stayed there. Silent. Rourke rested a hand on her back. No words were needed. Two hearts, one human. One alien, both survivors. That night, Lyra stood. In the mirror of her small room, she stared at her reflection. Her skin was no longer bruised. Her eyes were no longer hollow. The coat Rourke gave her rested on her shoulders, and for the first time, she saw someone who looked alive. She touched the mirror and whispered, "Lyra." Then again, "Lyra." Her voice was still soft, but steady, and her tears, they were no longer just from pain. Meanwhile, in the control room, Rourke set a course for a quiet moon far away from slavers and bounty hunters. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He only knew this: he would protect her. And maybe, just maybe, she would start to believe she was worth protecting. The Valkyrie moved quietly through the dark side of an asteroid field. The ship's lights were off. Engines ran low and silent. Every shadow outside looked like a threat. Captain Rourke sat in the pilot's seat, eyes locked on the scanner. He wasn't paranoid. They were being hunted. A bounty had been placed the same day he pulled Lyra from the market. Not just for her, for him too. The human who stole property, the notice said to the slavers. Lyra was just stolen goods to Rourke. She was a person, and that made him a target. Lyra stood quietly behind him, watching the stars pass. Her coat hung around her shoulders like a shield. Her violet eyes were calm, but she knew something was wrong. "They're getting closer, aren't they?" she asked softly. Rourke glanced back at her, surprised by how clear her voice had become. "Yes," he said. "3 ships have followed our trail through 2 systems. They're not giving up." Lyra stepped closer. "I can leave." "No," Rourke said instantly. "If I go, they'll stop chasing you." I said no. She paused. "But I'm the reason you're in danger." Rourke turned to face her fully. "No, the reason I'm in danger is because I did the right thing in a cruel galaxy. I won't regret that." Lyra looked at the floor. "But I don't want to lose you." He smiled gently. "You're not going to." Hours passed. The Valkyrie stayed hidden. Then the scanners beeped 3 blips on the screen. Ships. Fast ones. They had found them. Rourke jumped into action. "Strap in," he ordered. "We're moving." Lyra ran to the seat beside him. Her hands shook as she buckled herself in. The ship surged forward, weaving through tight rock tunnels and floating debris. Asteroids spun past the windows like giant bones. The enemy ships followed fast. "They're locking missiles," Rourke warned. A loud boom shook the ship. Sparks flew from the ceiling. Lyra screamed, grabbing the edge of her seat. "We're hit." "I know," Rourke yelled, pulling the ship hard to the left. "Just hold on." They dove into a narrow crevice between 2 massive rocks. The enemy ships chased, but one was too slow. Crash. An explosion lit up the darkness behind them. Hunter down. 2 left. Rourke gritted his teeth. "Come on. Come on." He saw a shadowy cave ahead. Big enough to hide in, but just barely. He pushed the engines. The Valkyrie slipped inside. The cave was quiet. Cold. Safe for now. Rourke powered everything down. No lights, no sound. Breathless silence filled the cockpit. "Are they still following?" Lyra whispered. Rourke stared at the screen. The blips hovered, then slowly turned away. "They lost us," he said at last. Rourke stood up, breathing heavily. But Lyra didn't move. She was shaking. Tears ran down her face silently. Her hands clutched her seatbelt. He knelt beside her. "Lyra, it's over. We're okay." She nodded, but she didn't speak. He reached out and placed his hand over hers. "I'm here. You're safe." She let out a long breath. Her voice came out small when the missile hit. "I thought I would wake up in chains again." Rourke's chest tightened. "You won't," he said firmly. "Not while I'm breathing." They sat in the dark together for a while, just breathing. Finally, Lyra whispered, "I want to stop running." "So do I, but how?" "We make a stand," he said. "We find allies. We make it clear Lyra is not a thing. She's not for sale. And anyone who tries to take her faces me." Lyra looked at him, her eyes full of something new. Strength. Later, in the quiet of the ship, Lyra stood in front of a mirror again. This time, she didn't see a scared girl. She saw someone worth protecting. She saw someone ready to fight, not with weapons, but with truth, with voice, with the one human who chose her freedom. Over fear, Captain Rourke watched her from the hallway. He didn't say anything, but he thought one thing. She's not the one who was saved. Asterisk, the Valkyrie floated silently above a dead moon. Below, the surface was cracked and dark, filled with old buildings and broken metal towers. Once this place was a mining colony, now it was a graveyard. Captain Rourke stood near the control panel, checking the ship's systems. His arm was wrapped in gauze from the last battle. The ship had taken damage, and they needed supplies to repair it. But more than that, they needed rest. Lyra stepped into the room. She was wearing the stitched coat he gave her, and something new confidence. "I want to come with you this time," she said. Rourke raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "I've been hiding long enough." They landed in silence. The air outside was cold and dry. Their boots crunched against the dust as they moved toward the abandoned outpost. Old machines lay in pieces. Wires dangled from broken ceilings. Everything smelled like rust and time. Rourke found a storage unit with emergency packs, rations, filters, medkits. He smiled. Jackpot. Then the ground shook. A distant sound like engines rumbled through the still air. Lyra's eyes widened. Someone's coming. Rourke ran to the edge of the building. Through his scope, he saw a small black ship landing nearby. 3 armored figures stepped out. "Bounty hunters. They found us again," Rourke growled. He grabbed his blaster. "Get back to the ship. Now." But Lyra didn't move. "I'm not running this time," she said. "Lyra, this isn't the moment it is," she said firmly. "They need to see what I really am." Rourke stared at her for a moment, then slowly nodded. "Then we do this together." The hunters entered the outpost slowly, weapons raised. They weren't just here to catch. They were here to hurt. One of them spotted Rourke and opened fire. Zap! Rourke dove behind cover. "We're pinned." Lyra didn't hide. She stepped into the open, her silver hair glowing in the sunlight. The hunters paused. "Target identified," one of them said. "Solari female caller not detected. Prepare shock restraints." But before they could move, Lyra raised her hands. Her fingertips began to glow. And then, light exploded from her. A wave of pure, bright energy rippled out from her body. The air cracked. The walls shook. The hunters dropped to their knees, groaning in pain. What is this?" One screamed, clutching his head. Rourke shielded his eyes, stunned. Lyra's voice rang out, not weak, not afraid, but clear and commanding. "I am not your property," she said. "I am not a slave. I am not a number. I am Lyra." The lead hunter tried to stand. Lyra stepped toward him. Her eyes burned like stars. "You stole my name. You silenced my voice. But I remember now." The hunter raised his blaster with shaking hands. Lyra's energy flared again. Crack. His weapon shattered. He fell to the ground, unconscious. The other two didn't even try to fight. They ran when the light faded. Lyra fell to her knees, breathing hard. Rourke ran to her side. "Lyra, you okay?" She looked up at him. Her lips trembled. And then she smiled. "I did it?" "Yes, you did," Rourke whispered, kneeling beside her. "You stood up." She nodded. "My mother once said Solari can shine brightest when they stop being afraid." "I think your mother would be proud." They walked back to the ship together. Lyra's steps were different, now stronger. Steady, free, inside the Valkyrie. Rourke placed the emergency packs in storage. Lyra sat quietly, staring at her hands. "I didn't know I still had that power," she said. "It was never gone," Rourke replied. "They just buried it under pain." She looked at him. "I want to help others like me." "You will." She smiled again. "And you'll help me?" "Always." That night, Lyra added something to the charm she had once made from wires. A small crystal wand that glowed faintly with her energy. She placed it beside Rourke's seat. A symbol not of fear, but of rebirth. The Valkyrie soared peacefully through the stars, far from bounty hunters, slavers, and broken colonies. The sky was open. Quiet. Free inside the ship, Captain Rourke stood at the window, watching the stars drift by like gentle waves on a sea. His bruises had faded, but something inside him had changed forever. He wasn't alone anymore. Behind him, Lyra sat at the round table, carefully building something with wires and scrap pieces. Her hands were steady. Her eyes were bright. She was humming softly, a human song. One Rourke had once played without thinking. And she had remembered. Lyra finished her work and smiled. It was a small statuette shape of two figures standing side by side. One was tall, human. The other, smaller, with glowing eyes and a light in her chest. She placed it on the shelf above the table. Her voice was soft but sure. "It's us." Rourke turned and smiled. "You're getting good at that." She stood and walked to the window. Beside him, "What now?" she asked. "Now," Rourke said, "we choose." Lyra blinked. "Choose what?" "Where to go. What to do. Who to be. No chains, no orders. Just us." They landed on a peaceful trade moon 3 days later. It wasn't ruled by warlords or corporations. It was small, quiet, and full of life. A place where no one asked questions. They found a place. To stay in the outer district's a small home with soft lights and a garden filled with glowing trees. Lyra touched the leaves. They shimmered under her fingers. She smiled. For the first time. She could feel the ground under her feet and know no one would force her to kneel. Rourke set up a repair workshop in the town. He fixed old machines, traded parts, and quietly helped people, but word of Lyra spread to not as a weapon, not as a trophy, but as a healer. Her energy once feared could now help damaged systems, broken tech, even small animals. People began to whisper her name with respect. Lyra, the Solari girl who glows. She laughed when she heard it. She wasn't hiding anymore. One morning, Rourke found her sitting on the roof, watching the sunrise. He climbed up and sat beside her. "I used to think silence was safety," she said. "But now I know it was just fear." Rourke nodded. "And now, I want to speak. I want to be heard." He looked at her. "Then speak. I'll listen." She took a deep breath. "I used to be alone. I was broken. I didn't believe anyone could care." Her voice shook. "But you did. You saw me when I was nothing." "You were never nothing," Rourke said. She looked at him, eyes full of warmth. "You gave me freedom. You earned it." She reached into her coat and pulled out something smaller. folded paper with careful writing. He opened it. It was a message written in her hand. "Thank you for giving me a future. But more than that, ... Thank you for seeing my soul." Rourke didn't speak. His throat tightened. He folded the paper and placed it in his pocket. "I'll carry this with me, always." That evening, Lyra lit a small lantern and placed it outside their door. "A Solari custom," she explained. It meant a home of peace. And, for the first time in her life, she truly had one. Weeks passed. Then months. Lyra began teaching children how to use small machines, how to listen to broken things and fix them not with force, but with care. Rourke watched her, proud. The girl who had once been silent in chains now helped others find their voice, and he had found purpose again, not through war, but through kindness. One night, they stood on the balcony, looking up at the stars. "So many places," Lyra whispered. "We'll visit them all," Rourke said. "Together, always." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and in that quiet moment, neither of them felt like a survivor anymore. They felt whole.